spiritual assassin, Donnie Hathaway. Okay. Okay. In a comment to a recent blog observation that Donnie Hathaway was murdered like Whitney Houston, I was asked, why would they kill Donnie? Okay. Donnie's story ended tragically with what some determined to be a self offering. Okay, let me see. We're gonna get to it. We're gonna get to it. We're going to okay. Okay, Donnie Hathaway, born 1945, Chicago, grandson of gospel singer Martha Cromwell, was billed as America's youngest gospel singer. Began singing at 3 years old. Okay. He could hear things that he couldn't play at first, but by the age of 4, he was able to sit down at a piano and play the things he could hear in his head. He would tell his grandmother, "I hear the most beautiful music in my head, Grandma." So she purchased a piano. She was a musician too, and he began to play. Donnie was very, very special. He was paranormal. Donnie was a brilliant musician, arranger, songwriter, and vocalist. Okay. At the height of his musical career, he spoke about transcending, creating, and conducting a concerto with the Boston Pop Symphony. He was exploring melodies, soft and elegant voices. He talked about exploring classical music and melodic patterns and motions, repetitive patterns that could be used with any scale. The use of practiced melodic patterns goes back to the dawn of civilization, the lands of Sumer and Kemet. Some of the ancient Kemetic melodic patterns have survived. One example of it can be found as the Egyptian melody in Louis Armstrong's 1928 Tight Like This. Okay. He was able to recapture some of the mysterious ancient melodic patterns surviving in Africa Black spiritual gospel music, and in silky smooth eloquence incorporate it in our everyday lives and struggles. They say that Donnie literally sat in the studio and cried when he heard the playback of his final mix of the song, "Someday We'll All Be Free." Okay. It is also very moving, emotional, and spiritual for me. At times, I listen to the song and reflect on my grandchildren and children of the world and fall into a deep prayer for their future health, safety, and well-being. I often break down in tears. The song seems to cleanse, heal, inspire, and then rejuvenate me to get up and continue the struggle with renewed vigor and commitment. Okay. They say that Donnie's 1972 four movements of Everything is Everything and Voices Inside reflect on his latent paranoid schizophrenia. Okay. He's talking about let's go and get on down with the exploding melodic and other dimensional experiences through music and movements, not drugs. Okay. Now, according to his widow, Eula Hathaway, Donnie had been confined on several occasions in psychiatric facilities in New York instead of Chicago. New York at the time was a hotbed of clandestine MK Ultra activity. They are always careful not to expose who treated Donnie and the mental institutions and hospitals that he had been confined at. He was hospitalized on several occasions. I guess by 73 or 74, it was determined that he was a paranoid schizophrenic. By 1974, Donnie dropped completely out of sight of the music industry and entertainment industry until January 1979, 5 years. The bottom line is that Donnie had extraordinary and paranormal abilities. He could see, hear, explore, develop, and capture the universal sacred art of music science practiced by healing temples of the most ancient, advanced, and mysterious civilizations. Most of what is called classical music was taken directly from secret Kemetic, Canaanite, Arabian, and African healing temples, and we just don't understand the universal power of music enough to try to keep it out of the power and control of influence of Luciferians. Egyptian temples were used in setting resonant frequencies for the purpose of healing the etheric body. We all know they changed the pitch from 440 hertz to 432 hertz. Your song pitch, right? We all know about this, right? This is music 101. Okay. Healing with sound, color, light, and music was integral to the ancient process of reharmonizing the body back to a state of total health. This process aided in resetting the person's own unique frequency signature, much like doing a computer restore point. Health was equated with being in tune with one's true soul path. The body was seen as an earthly vehicle which housed the soul and was treated like God's holy temple. Living a life in resonance and loving service to others was what the tenets of the Sakura priesthood were all about. Okay. Donnie Hathaway was a genius of music theory, a master pianist and songwriter, and possibly had the most beautiful male voice in soul music ever. Okay. Let's go here. According to fellow musician James Mtume, you know, the group Mtume, Juicy Fruit, and they did the theme song to what's the cop show with Malik Yoba, New York Undercover. Yeah, okay. James Mtume at the recording studio. Hathaway said that white people were trying to kill him and had connected his brain to a machine for the purpose of stealing his music and his sound. There's an episode in Black Mirror where the pop star was hooked up to a computer and they tried to, pull all the songs out of her brain, and then get the computer running through, and they create this amalgamation of human AI music. I forget what episode of Black Mirror that was, but let's continue. Okay. Because of Hathaway's mental state, the recording session was aborted, and all of the musicians went home instead of asking Donnie the what, who, when, and the why. It was important to ask these things because Donnie had been out of music recording studios as a free man since 1974. In February of 1978, Atlantic Records had to get permission from a hospital to fly Hathaway out for recording sessions of The Closer I Get to You with Roberta Flack. So when he made this record with Roberta Flack, Atlantic Records had to get permission from the hospital to fly him out to record this song. Okay. Let's continue. At Mtume's studio recording session on January 13, 1979, Donnie still wasn't free. Donnie did not leave the recording studio alone and ended up at the hotel. According to Reggie Lucas, Donnie was supposed to be under the 24-hour watchful supervision of David Franklin per Atlantic Records and that hospital. Lucas said that Donnie was heavily drugged that evening. He last saw Donnie Saturday evening leaving Roberta Flack's apartment with his official appointed chaperone and guardian, David McCoy Franklin, headed back to the Essex House Hotel. Okay, these are the founders of Atlantic Records, mainly Ahmet. Okay. Lucas said that Franklin and Roberta Flack showed up at the morgue on Monday to identify Donnie's body. It appears that no questions were asked about where Franklin was Saturday evening between the time he and Donnie left Flack's apartment and Donnie's death. And it appears that Franklin didn't offer any answers why he left him alone if Donnie was indeed left alone in that hotel room. Franklin's answers to these questions should be part of Donnie's historical record. They are not. Donnie's mental institution and the doctors that Franklin reported to should also be a part of Donnie's historical records. They are not. David Franklin was a quiet as kept Washington, D.C., Atlanta black attorney that worked closely with Ahmet Erdogan at Atlantic Records with black artists. Franklin was known to work behind the veil on a lot of political things for Washington, D.C. He was the chief economic development consultant for the Cooperative Assistance Fund in Washington from 1970 to 75. CAF was established in 1968 by a group of foundations to make investments in minority and low-income communities through CAF. In other words, it was a multi-million-dollar charity slush money laundering operation ran by a bunch of insider Washington, D.C. political head Negro in charge Coons and Uncle Toms. David was the husband of Shirley Franklin, the 58th mayor of Atlanta. There are no such thing as coincidence. Let's continue. Shirley Franklin and Roberta Flack are Delta Sigma Theta, Divine Nine Boule Negroes. Okay. Reverend Jesse Jackson, Prince Hall, Master Mason, Omega Divine Nine, planted a new false cover for Donnie's death among the masses. Reverend Jackson delivered Donnie's eulogy. He said it appeared to be neither homicide nor suicide. It seems to have been an accident. Donnie died with his coat, scarf, and cap on, and it's not likely that anyone would go through the preparation of putting on full attire just to jump out of a window. It was an accident. Jesse Jackson. I wasn't aware of this. Maybe he had already had his coat on, his coat, scarf, and cap on when he was thrown out of the window. So he was tossed out of a window. That's how he died. When Donnie brought up white people and psychotronic interference brain machines, they scattered like flies. Okay. And we know somebody had taken complete control over Donnie's mind and thoughts at the time of his death. He talked too much and they threw Donnie Hathaway out of the window. Holy cow, that is the hotel. And that's how far. Oh, no, that's terrible. Let's continue. Synthetic telepathy, also known as telepathy or psychotronics, is a term used to describe the process in brain-computer interfaces by which human thought is intercepted, processed by a computer, and a return signal generated that is perceptible by the human brain. Okay, the CIA director in 1979 was four-star Admiral Stansfield Turner, former president of the Naval War College and commander-in-chief of NATO's southern flank. Under Turner's direction, the CIA emphasized technical intelligence and signal intelligence more than human intelligence. Parapsychology, it's on public record that MK Ultra, the mind control research which Turner admitted to in 1977, spent millions of dollars studying the paranormal, voodoo, witchcraft, and psychics. I just said this last night. Let's continue. Turner disclosed that the CIA had been conducting mind control on countless numbers of unsuspecting victims for years without their knowledge or consent. So when people snap out and they say, I don't know what happened, I kept hearing voices in my head, they were targeted for whatever reason. But let's continue. Oh my God, this is such a long read. Holy cow, this is a long read. Wait, let me see how long this is. Okay. Let me see how long this is a long ass read. Oh boy. Okay, let's keep it going. Okay. On August 3rd, 1977, Turner went before Congress. He told Senate hearings about MK Ultra Monarch. He gave an account of a CIA-established network, including 80 medical universities, hospitals, and prisons. I told you about prisons like Seagate in the Luke Cage comic books. I said that shit's real. Prisoners do go missing. Okay, but let's continue. Together with 185 high-ranking U.S. scientists, researchers, and doctors, it was mentioned that the program had begun under the director of CIA, Allen Dulles. There's an airport named after this man. There's a Dulles Airport. That's named after him. In 1953. It pretty much says it all. Okay? There is a link between what was going on with Frank Olson in the early 50s and Donnie Hathaway in the 70s. U.S. civilians were unwittingly drugged with LSD during the 1950s under the U.S. Navy Schizophrenia and MK Ultra from 1953 into the 1970s. Okay. Now, hours after the sudden aborted recording session on January 13th, 1979, Hathaway was found below the window of his 15th floor room of New York's 48 floors Essex House Hotel. Okay. While seemingly odd that the safety glass window to his room had been meticulously removed and was on the bed. His hotel door was double locked from the inside, and there were no signs of struggle. Investigators ruled Hathaway's death a suicide. Okay. It was a cold and winter Saturday night in New York City. 700 miles away in Chicago, the infamous Chicago blizzard of 1979 hit the city, leaving 19 inches of snow. And after a period of unrelenting, bitterly cold, Donnie was found dead below his hotel window with his coat, scarf, and cap on. It appears that the window in his room was already on the bed when he entered, or was forced into it in frigid cold circumstances. Okay. Another scenario implies that Donnie brought along a special toolkit designed to remove the hotel safety glass frame and windows. The assumed scenario couldn't even be repeated in the infamous October 1st, 2017 Las Vegas flag shooting. Remember that? Okay. Investigative law enforcement agencies still will not comment themselves on how the alleged mass murder. Oh, no, we don't care about all that. We don't care about all that. Okay. In Donnie's case, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever that the Essex House Hotel would install code compliant safety glass windows to prevent suicides that can be easily and neatly removed without any special knowledge and tools by guests. It is not reasonable or logical to believe that they did in Donnie's case in that room. Furthermore, Donnie was under the influence of psychotropic drugs. Okay. In 1972, at the very height of his career and a string of hits among the masses, Donnie suddenly became depressed, paranoid schizoid. They say it was found that he was suffering from paranoid schizophrenia and was known to have taken up to 14 pills 2 to 3 times a day to control his disease. Donnie's death in the way was consistent with the CIA assassination manual. His death was primarily meant not to permanently silence him, but also to send a terrifying message to others to keep their mouths shut about Donnie, white people, and psychotronic mind machines. Okay. Look here. The hotel safety glass removable scenario also didn't even happen in the case of Frank Olson 26 years later. Or 26 years earlier in New York. Evidence suggests that the hotel's safety glass window was first broken and then Olson was thrown through his Statler hotel room to his death. Okay, Frank Olson, American bacteriologist, biological warfare scientist, employee under Alan Dulles and Richard Helms, who worked at Camp Detrick, now Fort Detrick in Maryland. Olson was at first said to have taken his own life from the 13th floor. Okay. On January 13th, Donnie Hathaway was on the 15th floor, but fell 13 stories like Olson to his death in New York. The CIA maintained that Olson had leapt through the closed window to his death as a result of a schizophrenic episode, just the same as Donnie. Olson's room also had been locked from the inside, just like Donnie's. However, an autopsy conducted 40 years later revealed an injury to Olson's skull was most likely caused by a blow to the head. And there was no evidence of any cuts to the body from broken glass. It seems that Olson, exactly as recommended in the CIA assassination manual, was 13 on the head, or was struck on the head, possibly while drugged, and thrown from the window to his death 13 floors below. Cheesy Pete's. On the night that Olson was found dead, the Statler Hilton had a special new bellboy on the job with access to the hotel room's passkey. It was Jean-Pierre Lafitte. Lafitte of the Corsican French Connection mob was descended from the notorious French Masonic late 18th century Lafitte brothers, Jean-Pierre and Alexander of New Orleans. They were slave boat runners and pirates. Jean Lafitte was a deep cover CIA, FBI, and FBI Federal Bureau of Narcotics contractor since 1952. He was an extremely deep cover CIA artichoke assassin linked to the high profile deaths of foreign and domestic heads of state, Patrice Lumumba and JFK. Oh, this is way too deep. Oh, let me stop. Okay, let me stop. I'm gonna stop. We can do part 2. I wasn't ready for all this. Lafitte just happened to be working as a bellman at the Statler Hotel the night Frank Olson crashed through the security glass window and dropped to his death. In 1953, Lafitte had been working undercover doing lowly work in several New York hotels, probably for the FBN, certainly for the notorious Colonel George White. He was on duty for more reasons than one at the Hotel Statler when Olson was thrown from the window. It is now believed that Lafitte was one of Olson's dark assassins. Lafitte also has an even more intriguing connection to the JFK assassination. On May 9, 1963, Lee Harvey Oswald applied for work at the William B. Riley Coffee Company in New Orleans. Riley was a rabid anti-communist who gave financial support both to Sergio Arachna Smith's crusade to free Cuban committee and Ed Butler's partially CIA-funded propaganda outfit, the Information Council of the Americas. And the Riley vice president, William Monaghan, was a former FBI agent and was a charter member of the Inca. New Orleans DA Jim Garrison also believed that Riley was part of a special clandestine U.S. intelligence apparatus, a view bolstered somewhat by Jerry Patrick Hemmings claimed that William Riley had worked for the CIA for years. Oswald worked for Riley May through July 1963, and H.P. Albarelli, Notes that around the time of the JFK assassination, Lafitte too was working for the Riley Company. Jean-Pierre Lafitte, a longtime professional police informant with underworld connections through the auspices of Colonel George Hunter White, was enlisted by CIA MK Ultra Monarch to assist Operation Midnight Climax with the sadist Dr. James Alexander Hamilton at CIA station agent Vacaville's California Men's Mental Health Facility. I know where this is. Okay. Operation Midnight Climax was an operation known only to Richard Helms and Gottlieb's Technical Support Division. It was a freewheeling illicit criminal operation headed by White, an Army captain, OSS officer, veteran agent of the FBN, who was also CIA operative. During the day, White worked as an FBM agent to keep psychoactive drugs out of circulation. When night fell, he and his minions dispensed these drugs widely to strangers in San Francisco and New York. Thousands of unwitting men were lured to CIA-sponsored drug and sex sessions by prostitutes at CIA safe houses. The prostitutes received $100 a night and were guaranteed protection from police harassment. The walls of CIA bordellos were decorated with photos of women in bondage and other suggestive sexual images. White had unrestricted use of surveillance technology. LSD and other mind-altering substances were slipped into the John's liquor by the hookers, and their sexual encounters were monitored and recorded from behind two-way mirrors. These taped sexual encounters were useful for blackmailing Johns, some of who were prominent, upstanding citizens. This is the Epstein shit, y'all. This is before Epstein. Frank Olson, why? Allegations pointed to the CIA having assassinated Frank Olson over fears that he would reveal the entire illegal Nazi U.S. biological warfare and mind control programs, as well as the chemical interrogation programs, to the press. Olson knew quite a bit. Dr. Harold Batchelor was the Army scientist in charge of consultation with Nazi doctor and former Deputy Surgeon General of the Third Reich, Dr. Kurt Blum. Holy cow. Blum served as the Sturm Abteilung during the Nazi regime, eventually rising to the rank of Major General. During World War II, Blum was the biological warfare representative of the Reich Research Council. Good grief. Blum was extremely dangerous Nazi. He was an expert in bacteriological warfare and biological weapons. He had a long-standing interest in the military use of carcinogenic substances and cancer-causing viruses. 1942, Blum became director of a unit affiliated with the Central Cancer Institute at the University of Posen, which is now in Poland. Blum worked on methods for the storage and dispersal of biological agents like plague, cholera, anthrax, and typhoid. He is known to have infected concentration camp prisoners with plague in order to test vaccines. Blum was an expert in aerosol dispersants and the transmission of malaria to humans. At Auschwitz, he sprayed nerve agents like tabun and sarin from aircraft on prisoners. My God. In March of 1945, Blum fled from Posen just ahead of the Red Army. He was unable to destroy evidence of his experiments. On May 17, 1945, he was taken into custody in Munich by U.S. Army Counterintelligence Corps. Baron Otto von Bolschwing, personal detailed to work for the Alsos mission. The Alsos mission was an organized effort by a team of U.S. military scientific and intelligence personnel to discover enemy scientific developments during World War II. Its chief focus was on the Nazi SS nuclear energy project, but it also investigated both chemical and biological weapons and the means to deliver them. One of Blum's principal responsibilities during the Nazi regime had been to report on the political reliability of German scientists and technicians. Therefore, his knowledge was invaluable to Alsos in helping the United Kingdom and the United States to identify an SS weapons experts who might work for them. Okay, I'm definitely going to leave this here. This is way too I wasn't prepared for all this. All right, I'm gonna stop here. We're gonna do a part 2 to this. We'll definitely do a part 2 to this.